Everyone thought Mia Lane was just the quiet girl who made perfect cappuccinos at Morning Brew Cafe. She smiled politely, never talked much, and wore long sleeves even in summer. People whispered about her scars, saying she had a troubled past. But nobody really knew the truth. Not until that morning. At 8:17 a.m., the peace shattered. A group of bikers rolled up, loud engines and louder laughter. Their leader, Blake Rollins, pushed open the door and stalked toward the counter with 4 men behind him. They came for drama, looking to mess with someone weaker. They found Mia. Blake mocked her softly at first, calling her dollface and coffee robot, but Mia didn't flinch. She just stood still, her eyes calmly scanning the room like she was calculating something. Only Frank, the old man in the corner booth, seemed nervous. He clenched his cane tighter with each passing second. Then Blake reached over the counter and grabbed her wrist. That's when time stopped. In one fast motion, Mia twisted his arm behind his back. He dropped to the floor like a sack of bricks. His crew didn't even move, they were too shocked. In under a minute, all 5 bikers were groaning on the floor. Taken down with the precision of a trained fighter. The customers were frozen. Frank just whispered, "She's one of them." Shadow 17. The room went quiet. Mia stood tall, no longer hiding. She wasn't just a barista. She was a veteran, a ghost, a survivor. And anyone who wanted to hurt her had just made the biggest mistake of their life. But to really understand what happened here, you need to know what those scars mean. Because this didn't start with violence. It started with war. It had been 3 years since Mia Lane last held a rifle. 3 years since Operation Dustfall went wrong, deep in the Syrian desert, when her team of 8 was sent in for hostage rescue, and only she came out alive. What people called scars on her wrist weren't just scars. They were her punishment for surviving. Her town thought she was quiet because of heartbreak. But Mia was quiet because she was planning. One quiet afternoon, the bell above the cafe door rang again. But this time, it wasn't a biker. It was a man in a sharp black suit stepping out of a black sedan. Mia's hands froze on the espresso lever. The air turned cold. The man's name was Commander Lucas Dre. He was the officer who'd sent her team into that kill zone. And now he was smiling like nothing ever happened. But Mia wasn't surprised. She had waited for this moment. For months, she had collected files, voice recordings, and battlefield logs. Every piece of truth hidden from public eyes. She pulled a USB drive from her necklace, walked to the front of the counter, and plugged it into the cafe's smart TV. The screen lit up. Secret documents, maps, money transfers. Voice memos of Dre agreeing to trade soldier locations for enemy payment. Gasps filled the cafe. Phones came out. The live stream began. It wasn't a coffee shop anymore. It was a courtroom. Dre tried to leave. He was surrounded. A customer was a vet. Another, a reporter. Mia didn't have to raise her voice. "You killed my family," she whispered. Outside, sirens screamed. Federal agents moved in. And finally, the world saw what she had carried all this time. Not revenge, but justice. And justice had just been served. Hot. As Commander Lucas Dre was led away in handcuffs, the coffee shop stood in complete silence. The bikers who once laughed at Mia Lane and mocked her quiet ways were now too stunned to speak. Their leader, Troy Maddox, walked up slowly, eyes filled with shame instead of arrogance. "How do we fix what we broke?" he asked quietly, his voice softer than before. Mia looked at the window, where across the street stood a military cemetery. "Go to Section 60, she said. "Read the names. Learn who they were. That's how you learn respect." 6 months passed. The same cafe was still there. But now, it felt like a different place. Not just a spot for coffee, but a place for stories, for healing, for truth. Mia had transformed it into a sanctuary, walls lined with photos of soldiers, shadow boxes with medals, and chairs always ready for a vet in need of a warm cup and a listening ear. Troy and his crew visited often. They brought flowers, they brought silence. They brought others like them who didn't understand pain, until they met someone who carried it with strength. Mia still watched the doors. Her eyes still scanned every face. But not to protect herself anymore. Now, she watched for the broken, for the lost, for the ones like she once was scared silent, scarred. Because Mia Lane wasn't just a barista or a fighter or a survivor. She was proof that truth never stays buried. That healing doesn't begin with loud voices, but with quiet hearts willing to listen. And that even from the darkest wars, the strongest light can rise from the hands of those who were never meant to live, but chose to anyway.